If you love Toyota sports cars, then no doubt you've heard of the Toyota MR2. Yes, the infamous snap oversteering death trap. It was one of Toyota's greatest icons. I mean, there are countless videos here on YouTube to watch if you're interested in the MR2. Back in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted a Ferrari but couldn't get one, you got the MR2. It was so popular, but during the early 2000s, it vanished. They just stopped making it. What made Toyota pull the plug on the MR2? I mean, it had a very solid following and it won the hearts of many enthusiasts. Join me in this journey to find out how the Toyota MR2 won the hearts of many and then died. In order for us to really understand how the Toyota MR2 won the hearts of many, we need to take a trip down memory lane back to 1976. Because that was when it all began, when Toyota introduced a design project with the goal of making a car that was great to drive, affordable and economical. But since this was also when the oil crisis happened, it got delayed for 3 years. So fast forward to 1979, a Toyota engineer Akio Yoshida wanted to work on a new car. He was very serious about it. In fact, he was so determined in making it into a reality, he figured out on his own where was the best place to put the engine. After countless hours, Yoshida finally decided the best place was in the middle of the car with the engine mounted transversely. This would make sure the car's weight is evenly distributed. From this idea, the car evolved over time. The prototype actually became more of a sports car and was tested in both Japan and California. They even got former F1 driver Dan Gurney to help test the new car. And the MR2 was born. At least the idea anyway for now. Because even if the initial prototype sketches did look like the first generation MR2, it went through a few changes before the first prototype. The SV3 was an early MR2 concept that they revealed in the autumn of 1983. Everyone loved it, the public, and even the motoring press during its unveiling in the Tokyo Motor Show. So it was decided. The car will be launched in 1984 in the Japanese market under the name MR2.
There's a new game in town. It's called putting the fun back into driving. Introducing the Toyota MR2 sports car.
This was gonna be the first mass-produced mid-engine car to come from a Japanese automaker. Originally, the SV3 concept was gonna be a commuter car, but Toyota wanted everyday commutes to be more fun. So what did Yoshida do? He made the car more sportier, which led to the MR2 we know of today. To fully develop the SV3 concept, Toyota asked Lotus to help with the performance and handling of the car. But soon after, Toyota left Lotus because Lotus had set up a partnership with GM. Actually, many people think that the MR2 was designed by Lotus and assembled by Toyota. This is actually a very common misconception. Lotus helped with the development of the suspension design, but the car was completely designed by Toyota. They did borrow a few design cues from earlier Lotus sports cars though. Because everyone loved the SV3, it gave Toyota the go signal to launch the first gen MR2 in June of 1984. The name MR2 stood for Midship Runabout 2-Seater, and the car became a part of Toyota's sporty lineup along with the Celica and the Supra. The JDM version had 3 different trim levels with 2 engine options. The one to have though was the one with the 1.6 litre 4AGE, which I know you are very familiar with, because this was the same engine used in the AE86. It was voted Japan's Car of the Year for both 1984 and 1985, and it was being compared to the new Honda CRX. Toyota would then introduce a supercharged MR2 in 1986. The US wouldn't get the supercharged version though until 1988. What did you expect? Its engine, the 4AGZE, was based on the same block and head as the 4A engine and was fitted with a supercharger and an intercooler. The new supercharged MR2 produced 145 horsepower at 6,400 RPM, which was very powerful for the time. Considering how light the MR2 was, it could hit 0 to 62 in under 7 seconds. It may not sound a lot to you now, but that was comparable to some lower-end Ferraris back then. The earlier model was known as the Mark 1A. The later model Mark 1B had a few changes under the bonnet and the outside. The most noticeable change was an updated suspension design that was not interchangeable between the two versions. When it came to motorsport, the MR2's impressive handling was also tested. While it did very well on tarmac, Toyota had other plans. The rear-wheel drive Celica proved itself in the African Group B rallies in the 1980s but struggled on the tighter European stages. So what did Toyota do to solve this problem? Toyota's European rally team started working on the MR2. It was codenamed 222D, and this would take on big-time players like the Audi Quattro, Peugeot 205 T16, and the famous Lancia Delta S4. While the 222D kind of looked like the MR2 on the outside, it was so different everywhere else. It was basically the MR2 on steroids. It was much wider than the standard MR2 to accommodate a wider track so it can be more stable and have a greater range of tire width. The body was made from lightweight composite and had a clamshell opening so it's easier to get to the internal components of the car. As for the front of the car, a simple opening bonnet housed the extractor for the radiator. They also changed the iconic pop-up headlights with more reliable and lightweight units. They paired them with rally spotlights that were covered with a polycarbonate screen for better aerodynamics. And how much power did it make? Well, apparently around 600 horsepower. All of these sounded amazing, but unfortunately, it didn't even get the chance to race because the Group B class was disbanded in 1986 along with Group S, which was the class the 222D was designed for. Now when you think of the Toyota MR2, this is probably the one that comes into your mind since this is the most popular and most wanted MR2, codenamed W20. It's still a mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout and fun to drive affordable sports car. Toyota's chief engineer Kazutoshi Arima wanted to make the MR2 more exotic. So, the second gen featured a more stylish design with more rounded edges, not like the boxy shape of the first gen MR2. It also had the more luxurious interior design compared to the first generation. Chief designer Kunihiro Kuchida, who was the guy that designed the Lexus LS400, refined the design of the MR2, making it look like a scaled-down European supercar. The design borrowed a few cues from a Ferrari supercar, so naturally, people started calling the MR2 the baby Ferrari or the poor man's Ferrari. It grew in size compared to the first generation. It was longer and wider. It weighed 400 pounds more than the previous car, but that was okay, because this time, instead of a supercharger, the MR2 had a turbocharger strapped onto the engine, making 200 horsepower and was only available in a manual. Now the second generation MR2 was only produced for 10 years with only few changes throughout its life. One change Toyota had to address was its suspension. It was a very fun car to take through the corners, but it had a tendency to kill you if you're not careful. It would let the back end out if you let off the gas pedal during a turn. The car would then typically snap back when the car found its weight balance. MR2 snap oversteer. It caught even the most experienced drivers off guard. So Toyota had to change a few components to fix the problem in 1993. They upgraded the suspension, put a bigger anti-roll bar, increased the wheel size to 15 inches, installed larger brakes and wider tires. So if you want an SW20 MR2 and didn't want to deal with snap oversteer, you would need to go for models after 1993. In 1998, to celebrate the TRD 2000 GT's victories in the Japanese GTC racing series, they offered an official body kit and tuning package for the SW20 MR2. owners could get the body conversion and tuning package that would include engine tuning, suspension upgrades, new wheels and new interior, and turn their regular MR2 into a wide-body TRD 2000 GT replica race car. Some have said that some TRD 2000 GT replicas made around 500 horsepower. All conversions were done by Toyota Technocraft. Lightweight fiberglass parts were used for a lot of the body panels, and the cars were given new TRD VIN plates. The 3rd Gen MR2 had 3 different names depending on where you are in the world. In the United States, it was called the MR2 Spyder, in Europe the MR2 Roadster, and finally in Japan the MRS. It was revealed in 2000 and it was only available as a convertible. It was actually good looking in my opinion, but some MR2 fans were kind of disappointed with its more conservative look.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
The MR2 Spyder also made 138 horsepower, which was way less than the previous MR2. But it didn't really matter much because it was so light and was solely focused on the driving experience. The car was actually really good. Some journalists and YouTube car reviewers even say that it's the best handling car anyone could buy, even better than the Miata.
This feels better than an NC Miata in my opinion. This feels better than... What? This thing sounds so mean!
It was also being compared to cars like the Porsche Boxster, which is what Toyota actually wanted. The MR2 Spyder is actually a great momentum car, but if you're not just in it for the handling and you want the power as well, engine conversions to other Toyota 4-cylinders or even 6 is not unheard of. The MR2 Spyder is actually a very popular choice as a first project car because it is a Toyota. You wouldn't have to worry about it breaking down all the time, and parts are relatively cheap, which is a nice added bonus. But unfortunately, even if it's still a great car to drive, MR2 sales started to plummet around the world because more and more people wanted practical cars like an SUV or a hybrid. As a result, production ended in 2007.
Just not making enough money.
There is still no official statement that there would be a 4th Gen MR2, although there have been speculations because of the statement Gazoo Racing head Tetsuya Tada made during a press drive of the new Supra in Japan. He was asked if hypothetically he would bring back the MR2, who would he want to work with? His answer was Porsche, which does make sense since MR2s and some Porsches both have mid-engine layouts. Anyway, do take this with a grain of salt because we can't be 100% certain since no one could tell if he was being serious or not. If he was to bring back the MR2, along with the GT86 which would take the Celica's place and the 5th Gen Supra, Toyota's sports car lineup would be complete like it was in the 90s. The MR2 was one of the greatest and one of the most iconic sports cars Toyota ever produced in the late 80s and 90s. From the 1st gen all the way up to the 3rd gen, these mid-engine sports cars will forever be in the hearts of many enthusiasts. With Toyota bringing back the Supra, it will be exciting to see what the future would be like for the MR2. What do you think? Do you think Toyota should bring back the MR2? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I made a video last time on why the rotary engine is Mazda's worst engine and also their best engine. And with that being said, thanks for watching.